everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Janet Ettele. She is the author of How Joyous Effort Works, The Energy to Benefit Others. This is her latest book, which is part of the series called How Life Works. So there are other three titles. This one in particular, How Joyous Effort Works, has a foreword by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. What's not to love about him and his work? I love the mandalas. I have to say, on the covers, they're so beautiful. The colors too. I'll show you in a moment. But Janet is also an accomplished musician and dedicated student of Buddhist philosophy. This is my brief introduction to you, Janet. But the full bio will be at the end. A question that I love asking everyone and never left me really, and still feels like it's the most profound question that anyone can ask. Um, how would you introduce yourself? Who are you in your own words in this very moment?
Well, I'm simply one of 7 billion people on this planet who
Mm,
loves being a mother, a grandmother now of two, um,
yeah. Uh,
a teacher, a coach, an author who wants nothing more than for there to be peace in the world. And
mm, mm,
that my dream is that this planet could be the planet and its inhabitants could be just healthy, thriving, and at peace.
yes, how beautiful. What's not to love about that vision and this wish from the heart, right?
It's what moves
Yes.
me, I would say. And
Yeah.
when you say how would I define me, I'm thinking what moves me, and
Mm,
that would be my
yes. Yeah.
answer.
Yes. I love that, Janet. In a way, it feels like what moves us in the depth of what we are, it's also coming from life itself, isn't it? It's the movement of life itself, of divinity. um, it really wants, it feels like it's almost like harmony it's looking for, and that music comes to mind a lot when I think about, that we as humans can flow with life in our own hearts and go back, return to our own divinity. So it feels very natural the way you answer that question. uh, Very natural, just like nature.
True.
So, talk to me about the backstory of you, going into the, yeah, I would say story, right? Because we all have the background and how we perceive to have gotten here. So, talk to me about how you became a musician first and what inspired you to become an author of these four beautiful books. And I'll have them here.
Well, musician,
Yeah.
I think when I was small, I grew up in a home that, oh, the books.
Yeah.
I grew up
Yeah,
in a home
beautiful.
that had a piano, and my older sister was taking piano lessons. She was 5 years older, or is 5 years older than I am. And I don't know, I just remember being drawn to the piano, and I would just play it,
Mm,
even though I didn't know how to play. But one day, my mother was talking on the phone with a friend of hers who must have heard me playing
mm, yeah.
and suggested
Yeah.
that she have me get piano lessons. And so my mom asked would I like piano lessons. I had no idea what piano lessons were, but I said yes.
Right.
And that was the
Right.
beginning. And I would say I took piano lessons on and off for several years. I was sent away, my parents divorced, and I was sent away to a boarding school when I was 15. So
Right. Right.
there wasn't a lot of structured piano lessons, but there was a piano in the school where I went, and sometimes I would still always kept my connection with it.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
I, Long story short, I ended up applying to, and getting admitted into Berklee College of Music in Boston.
Mm,
And
wow.
at that time, I think it was a lot easier to get into than it is now because I, I got in, and it was probably the first time I felt so
Mm,
like like, oh, this is where I belong. There was just
Yeah.
music bouncing off the hallways. Every classroom had a piano in it, and every blackboard had the musical staff on it, and everybody was practicing. And it was just such a great
Yeah.
environment to be in. So, and I was a composition major. I never wanted to be a performer. I'm not comfortable being on stage, but I always loved composing. And to this day, even though I don't notate, I get the most pleasure out of just improvising
Mm,
and making music up as I go. And
right.
I call my music piano mandalas because, like the mandala,
Yeah.
it's impermanent,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes. Yes.
so
Mm.
there, I do have two CDs called Piano Mandalas that in your notes people will find my website if they're interested. It's just very meditatively
Right.
inspired music.
Yes, I love how humble you are when you speak of the university getting. That's yeah, that's part of wisdom. What can I? Yeah, I have to say that.
Well, thank you. So
Mm,
writing, I'd say began again around the time of my parents' divorce when I was so devastated by that. As the youngest, I was the only child still living at home. And then when they
right.
sent me away, it was, I started keeping a journal. That was like my place where I could, it was like I became my own oracle, so to speak,
Right.
to
Right.
kind of write out my questions and try to write my answers. They weren't always
Mm,
so wise at 15 years
yeah.
old, but that was
Mm,
a practice that I began to at that young age. And I'd say when I got to college at Berkeley, there most of the classes were all music related, but there was
right.
a teacher named Pat Pattison who offered
Mm,
classes on poetry, and I took every one of them that I could. I loved his classes and I loved studying poetry and I loved our efforts
mm,
to try to write poetry. So that's really the only formal foundation of writing, if you want to call it formal. And letter writing. That's the other thing. Back when I was growing up, people wrote letters to each other. And in
right.
writing letters, you're writing a story of what you've been doing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
it. I hadn't planned on becoming an author, but I was. I when I had begun going to this Tibetan Buddhist Center for Universal Peace, which is about 5 miles from where I live, and
Yeah.
loved what I was learning. So I was very. I'd been going for like 2 years to attend classes there, and during one of the classes, I met another student during one of the breaks that we got to talking. Um, I really feel like I'm hopscotching around here. It's been a long life, so it's hard to
Yeah.
put it
I know.
into a
Yeah.
chronological order. But anyway, he and I got to talking about how profound we felt these teachings were, and how really, even though they're 2,500 or more years old, human nature is human nature. The suffering 2,500
Mm,
years ago is really not so different as
mm,
it is today. And
right.
we just felt that our culture, I think we can all feel it, the stress level for people, the anxiety in many, the anger, the frustration,
Yeah.
all of that is kind of palpable in our culture. That
Right.
these teachings, if they could be presented in such a way that
Mm,
would be accessible to a Westerner that isn't necessarily going to go walking into a Buddhist temple or pick up a book on Buddhism, perhaps. But and we talked about that, and it turns out he was in the publishing as a profession, was in the publishing industry, but had opened up his own side gig, a little imprint that was dedicated to Buddhist teaching
yeah.
and doing books on that. And he was sharing with me that he had had this idea that had been incubating in his mind for several years, which
Mm,
is about
mm,
to have a series of books based on a teaching by an 8th century Buddhist monk and scholar named Master Shantideva, which
yeah.
was taught in Sanskrit, of course, but if we translate it to English, it means the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life.
Yeah.
And as this, it sort of outlines what we know today as the six perfections of generosity, moral and ethical discipline, patience, how joyous effort works. I'm so used to
Mm.
saying that title. Just joyous effort is the name of the perfection.
Yeah.
Concentration, and then wisdom. And
Mm.
so
Wow.
he shared his
Yeah.
idea about it, that it would be fiction, that we would need a
Mm.
teacher character and a student character, and invited
Mm.
me to take a stab at writing the first 10 pages of what became the first book. So I did, and
Beautiful.
so
It's
that's
beautiful.
how it
God.
happened.
And I mean, it's even by looking at it, it's just so something happens to the body and the mind. It's almost like it opens the heart and the mind becomes curious. So I don't know if that has to do with the colors or with the mandalas. I really like them. I have them around my house. So talk to me for a moment, for those who don't know what the bodhisattva is, because some people don't know the term,
Sure. A
and about
bodhisattva.
the colors
Well,
of
okay.
the
Which
color of the
first?
books.
Which
Yes.
first do you want me to talk?
Whatever comes to you first. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
The colors are simplest to explain.
Uh,
Claire Cerullo is the designer that designed the books and the fonts, and she did all that work of making a book look
it's beautiful.
pretty. And she
Yeah.
had this idea that for each one would be a color of that's associated with the chakras.
Mm, yeah.
So
Yeah.
the root chakra. I don't really know all the chakras names. You probably do. But does that correspond? Do you see how they correspond? I believe the green is for
Yeah.
the heart. Is that?
Yes.
I
The
think so.
green's the heart. Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and then for the fifth and sixth books, which
Mm.
not sure that those are going to happen, but they would be, the whatever the colors are that correspond. I believe the sixth chakra would be white. Is that correct? Where to keep
Not
going?
sure the sixth chakra, the seventh, isn't it the crown, the
Yes,
next one, or the throat, and then you
the
have
throat
on
and
the
the
heart, the
crown.
throat, and then the crown will be like a purple type of color, isn't it?
Okay,
Like lilacs, purple.
yeah.
I would
So
love to see that.
So
I love
that's
purple
how
for
that I have to give all the credit to Claire. She did a beautiful job. She really, and
mm,
she's a wonderful person to work with.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
the
yes.
Bodhisattva is someone who seeks to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. So, in
Mm,
other words, in the Buddhist
mm,
tradition, for people who don't know, they have an understanding of previous lives and future lives, and that this path of becoming a bodhisattva can take, it's not necessarily a one lifetime effort and you're there. They really
right,
are dedicating, even in their future lives, to whatever extent they can control it. Their plan is to achieve Buddhahood, not to sit
yeah,
and hang out in nirvana forever, but to be
right,
able to take rebirth in a form that can help all beings. And
right.
that's their intention. And that's why you would
Right.
see in the subtitles of the books, it's always the intention to benefit others.
Mm.
For how joyous effort works is the energy to benefit others.
That's I'll remove it for now. Thank you, Claire, for the beautiful covers. I have to say that to the
Yeah.
camera if she watched this interview.
One other thing to add is that for most of us, you know, being a bodhisattva may or may not be on the average Westerner's agenda, but
Yeah.
it's a guide to a more peaceful life. And that,
Mm,
I think I can say in all honesty, that when we start to understand the wisdom that is presented, not
yeah.
just understand it, but to
Mm,
really internalize it to the degree that it becomes a part of your way of life,
right.
that you do experience a much more peaceful life, regardless of what's going on around us.
Mm. That is so true, though. Related to that, I have to, again, what comes to mind is the idea of karma.
Mhm.
So, isn't it? It's very simple, very fast, almost instant. We can feel the effects of the energies of that when we have beautiful thoughts about other people and ourselves too, kind thoughts, or perhaps we nurture those kind thoughts that come through our minds, then something happens to the body too. It
Mhm.
relaxes more. So that to me is the evidence of how this cause and effect, dynamic works. And
True.
and I know that there's a lot that I'm exposed to when it comes to all kinds of knowledge, and one of which the most interesting to me has been spirituality. But I have been very much also, let's say, I have been approached with the idea that we are already what we are looking for. We're already the beautiful divine being, untouched, unchanged, infinite, timeless, here now. So there's nothing really to do to get there because we're already there. It's in a way kind of uh not removing, in a sense of being unkind to it and trying to get rid of, or anything that's covering it, but being aware of it, of the things that are kind of masking, covering the sun per se. It's like the clouds covering the sun. That's what I come across all the time, and from my own experience, that makes a lot of sense. And another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, I would love to hear from you. What is your um, input? What's your kind of say, what do you think about when the idea of being a woman, it's also much closer, by being born a woman, it's already much closer to that kind of wisdom called spirituality, or being a spiritual path, that we are already wired somehow to be this loving bodhisattva being naturally. I would love to hear your your thoughts on this.
Well, in this life, I only know the experience of being female. I'm sure I've been, and if we do have other lives, I've probably been everything as well. Um, I, I do think that instinct of compassion, I think even His Holiness the Dalai Lama will say that too, that women do have that more spontaneous. But I also think that it's there, the seeds for it are there, and men too. It's like, just as there are some women who can be cruel
Yeah,
to their
right.
children or to others,
Mhm,
there,
mhm.
I think that
Yeah.
it's what is nurtured, what is nourished in someone
Mm,
from the time they're young, that develops one quality over another. I don't know, but
yes.
the Dalai Lama talks about the need for what he calls secular ethics and
Mm,
educating the heart, which would be something that we
mm,
could, if we could bring them into the education for our children,
mm. Yeah,
what a different world that would be.
right. Tell me
But,
about it. Yeah, that's a
yeah.
beautiful vision and proposition.
Well, it would be,
uh,
yeah, interesting, but there's always resistance. But that's why
right.
secular ethics, because we want to be respectful. Everyone has their own tradition.
Yeah,
Um,
yes, that's true. And I try not to bring these the topic of the idea of separation, men, women, the dualistic world, into play when it comes to what I'm trying to achieve with my own mind and heart. Is seeing, like the Sufis would say, everywhere I turn, I see the face of God. So that's really, that's so clear to me that that's where we want to be, at that level, at that consciousness state, where everywhere we turn, we see the face of God. If we look at an animal, a plant, anything, and we treat them as such, with respect, but beyond respect, it's really the recognition of sacredness that's everywhere. That's the essence, the ground, uh, the gosh, the ultimate element, substance of everything is divine, really. So that's really my if there's a spiritual goal with this life, it would be this one, to see everything as God and to treat everything as such. Um, and when it comes to the thinking women, men, knowing who has that, I asked that question because recently I was introduced to this idea that women, we are naturally more inclined to be what we call spiritual. Then we're already doing that. A lot of women have been living a spiritual life even without knowing that was spiritual, in a sense of caring, giving. They just give so much. Um, and we don't want to get into the, that would be like, I guess, a topic of more political type of topic, feminism and kind of choosing sides and all that. But we do clearly see the world that has been, let's say, there's been a lot of forcing, right, of a way of living that has been forced to be, and mostly by men, is the patriarchy. So I don't know, and I usually try not to take sides or even talk about this. I don't know why this came now. I'm very spontaneous. Perhaps I just wanted to hear from you, like
Yeah.
maybe Janet has the answer or has, can clarify that a little bit
I
more.
don't
But
have I don't have an answer. I'm not omniscient, but I do know that in history, women have been kept out of the, in the Christian churches and
yeah,
the earlier Judeo-Christian culture and other
yeah,
cultures. Women were just we were only allowed to learn through our husbands, or
right,
and I
right.
think that that
Huh.
same system was very threatened by what it maybe didn't want to acknowledge, but as some kind of what
Mm,
you're describing connection,
mm,
um,
yeah,
a spiritual connection that I think we do have. And I guess as I'm thinking back to earlier days, we were working with plants and
oh yeah,
um, just like the agricultural end of things with the children, and that
mm,
was our life. And
right,
the men were probably out hunting, which is a different kind of aggression, which was
yeah,
necessary for them. It's not a fault, it was
right,
just the way the nature of life went. And so it makes sense what you're saying, that that would have been what was nurtured more in women and perhaps differently in men. But I do know a lot of wonderful men, that are
mm.
very kind. And
Yes, me too, Janet. Especially with this platform, I have met amazing, amazing, beautiful men. Right, a lot more women because I have a lot more women on the platform. But yeah, beautiful men too. Um, so, gosh, your book. So, how joyous effort works. The question that came to mind immediately when I saw the title was, my platform is titled "The Fit for Joy." That came to me spontaneously too. I mean, after it's almost like it was an insight, a spiritual insight, I would say. So and that has a meaning too. But what is how do you see this, the interpretation of the meaning of the word joy versus happiness? Are they one and the same or somehow different for you?
I don't know that they're so different.
Yeah,
They're both a feeling. I know
yeah.
there's probably nuances of difference that I would be really hard pressed to try to say what they are
Yes,
right now.
yes,
I'd have to think about that a little bit more. Um,
yes. Huh.
but the reason the book is titled How Joyous Effort Works is because when you're going to take on some work, something that requires a lot of energy, devotion,
Right.
and applied effort, if you really understand the value of what it is that you're seeking to achieve,
Mm,
you're going to be really joyful in that
mm,
effort.
yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're pumped for it. There's no resistance there. It's like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. I know it's a lot of work, but you're
Mm,
excited about
mm,
what you know
yes.
that outcome is going to be.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's almost like you. I'm sure you heard the idea of intention, right? Setting an intention, and that kind of uplifts the heart. I do that a lot with anything I do. I set an intention. They call in yoga nidra. They call it sankalpa. I don't know if you heard about that term.
No,
I think it's a Sanskrit word. It's basically intention from the heart too. So it's interesting how that has been lost, right, Janet? This basic wisdom of coming from a place that we love already, that it's already here. Again, something that's already within us, that's true. So it's so close that there's no gap even. But we somehow the mind manages to create a distance and kind of do something completely different a lot of times. So what was the intention with the book? I know it's you tell stories. I want to ask that question too. Why stories? Why did you choose to tell stories in order to deliver these timeless wisdom? I
that's
would love to hear that too.
that's a great question. I found in my experience that there's a lot of very scholarly academic literature out there that's very heady, very a lot to
Yes,
you have to. I don't work
yes,
that way. um,
yes.
it
Very,
takes
very male.
yeah, and even in listening to some of the classes I attended, I it was a lot to absorb, and I felt that if we could put these into stories with characters that we could relate to, and we
Mm,
get to be what I call the fly on the wall
okay.
as Troy, the main character, is receiving his
Yeah.
teachings, questioning
Mm,
them, challenging them,
yeah.
maybe doubting them, and
Yes.
then meditating on them because he does learn to meditate, and so we get to be a fly on the wall with him even through his meditation practices. And
Right.
then as he encounters circumstances to put what he's learned into practice. Um, I feel that that delivers a greater opportunity to connect with readers at the heart
Mm,
rather
yeah.
than the cerebral, which has its place too. I mean, these teachings are
Right.
really deep and they're very profound and you can be
Right.
very involved. Um,
Right.
but perhaps as a way to just kind of have an entree that's non-threatening to just check it out a
Yes.
little bit.
Yes. Yeah. It's
And
playful. Right. It's very
well,
playful.
I hope
Yes.
so. Yes. And also
Yes.
included in the book are verses, actual verses from Shantideva's
Mm,
teaching, so that
yes.
that helps to just kind of highlight what the teaching is, and then the
Right.
characters sort of illustrating them to the best of my ability. Yeah.
Right. You've done a beautiful job per se. To me, it's beyond even a job work. It's a labor of love, right? As some people would say. It's truly beautiful. The question that came to mind as well, like, did you for the characters? Is that I'm wondering if one of them or Troy is that something that's based on is it closer to your own personality, or somebody that you know? I'm wondering where it came from, the inspiration for each character. That's another question that came to me.
So if we go back to the first book, which was the first one I read and I wrote rather, and as I had heard, because I hadn't studied writing, but I had heard that write what you know. And
Mm,
so the first, and the publisher, John Cerullo, said, we need
yeah.
a teacher character and we need a student character. I thought, well, I teach
Yeah.
piano. We'll
Uh,
have her be a
yeah.
piano teacher. And the student was also, even though he's male and
Yeah.
he's not exactly like me, he has some of
Yes.
the similar experiences, the divorced parents, the how that
Yeah.
tore him apart, the being having a difficult relationship with his father's second wife. Um,
Yeah.
all of these were experiences that I too had experienced. Um,
Right. Mm.
so, and I also am a mother of two sons. So I felt like I
Right.
understood that young man, but it's not my sons, you know. But
Right.
I do have one son who was a guitar player. Now he's more of a bass player, but
Yeah.
he helped me choose the guitar that Troy meets and that Troy finds in the second
Mm,
book. Um,
mm,
so I think it's
yeah.
a lot of my life experience is in there. Although Troy has some issues that I didn't have, which was
Right.
I never got into a lot of fights. I don't think I've ever been in a fight.
Good.
But
Yeah.
he had a
Good.
knack. He started drinking too much when he was away at college and stopped going to classes. He was while drinking under the influence of alcohol, his temper would just get out of control and he would get into some pretty wicked fights. So that is
Right.
not my experience.
I'm glad to hear that. That's
Yeah, that
yeah,
was
that's
just put
really
that out there for the record. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's there's something about vulnerability and being the imperfect us or parts of us. There's something about that that's so beautiful, I have to say, when we just open up to them and we are able to talk about it, write about it, even be playful about the things that we have been through that have shaped the way, our psyche, the way we think and navigate life. And I heard something beautiful the other day about the divine, like if God was something, this perfect entity that's watching, it's right here, a present, this perfect presence. The only thing that he or she would want, it would be something imperfect, because he or she is already perfect. God's already perfect. So it's looking for something that's imperfect to make itself not complete because it's already complete, but in a way to make that dance possible, because the imperfect with the perfect kind of dancing, moving through this reality as yeah, as us humans. I don't know, that resonated with me for some reason.
Is it like the yin and the yang, what you're talking about?
I would say so. I don't know how I interpreted at that moment that I heard about 3 days ago, I believe.
Mhm.
But now it comes, yeah, it could be this, in order for this to be this dance of duality, it had to be pieces, right? Cannot be whole, because wholeness wouldn't be able to move or do anything, because it's whole, it's complete, it's infinite, it's already
Ah,
everything that there is. It doesn't need anything else to be. So yeah, or I'm a student of Vedanta too. It's the Hindu philosophy of very deep. I think it seems like it might be older than Buddhism. I'm not sure. 7,000 years old. The Upanishads, very 7,000,000, 7,000 years, 7,000. Yeah.
wow.
So anyway, they talk about this reality as a dream reality. So that would make sense too. And they say in a poetic way that's God's dreams. Like now, what's happening right here, right now, it's God's dream. So God is dreaming. That also resonates. I don't know to what what part of the mind, even, because the mind, it's really, and the nature of the mind is to navigate through this reality, so it doesn't really know what the infinite is because it's finite. But there's something in me that really understands that, and I wonder what part of me understands that, what part of us human beings understand that, that this is a God is dreaming, and that's not really 100% real.
So
It's
when
as real as it lasts.
there's a war, is God having a nightmare? I don't
Huh,
I
yeah,
don't
yes,
understand
yeah,
that. That
yeah, yeah. In a way, Yeah, basically, that's a question that I had for you about. I studied Buddhism too, but I think I did Tibetan, but I did mostly Zen Buddhism
Oh,
because it
cool.
was much more kind of straightforward. And I was always I loved the big picture. I was searching for that. What is this all about? So, according to Vedanta, we have believed with the mind, of course. We have kind of been identified with the body and the mind, the thoughts, the memories, the ideas, concepts upon concepts, and the body itself. So we have believed it to be this, the human entity. And for that reason, we keep coming back here. In Buddhism, it seems to be a bit different, right, Janet, the way they see that. There's reincarnation and mind continuation. It might be a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much of what you've been saying earlier, but just when you say we're already there, we're already close to it.
Mm,
The Buddhist
mm,
teachings, from what I understand, are that we all have what they call Buddha nature.
yeah,
Every sentient being,
yeah,
even the little insects, has this
mm,
Buddha nature. But
yeah,
the word would be obscured
yeah,
as a result of
right,
our karma, our lack of understanding these things, what they
right,
call mental afflictions of things like
mm, mm,
anger, hatred,
yeah,
greed, pride, the things that are
yeah,
negative that then,
right,
when those are
mm,
present in the mind, will generate actions that will then
yeah,
generate more negative karma. So
mm, mm,
there's all of that is all tangled up together. I don't know that I can separate one from the other from my understanding of this, but this is why it's such a beautiful thing. I know in your background, you have really studied so many. You said, I think, Jainism and Hinduism and Vedanta, Buddhism, Zen. Um, that I love that seeking for a truth that
yeah,
clearly is your
yeah,
path, and I think all of us as well. And the method to get there is the point. Is what brings us
mm,
to that method. And I think
mm,
if the result is one of compassion and kindness, then I think that's a good, that's a
mm.
good path. Right?
Yes. We have arrived in a sense, right? I guess that would be the embodiment, right, Janet, of all these teachings and all these seeking. The point of no longer seeking, but because now you are saturated with that sweetness of truth, I would say.
It
There's
takes
something
time though,
about
doesn't it? I mean, it's not something that you're going to go to a seminar for a
that.
week and come out of it. It takes the first. They talk about the three stages of wisdom in Buddhism, which you might have heard also of. First, you're listening to a teaching or you're reading. Second stage of wisdom is you are reflecting on
Mm,
that, really sizing it up, testing it out, because you want to
yes.
use your logic to. And then the
Yeah.
third is meditation. And then through that meditation is like the rehearsal for the actual practice of doing it in your daily life. And so it's
Mhm.
really important, whether you're reading a book or you're attending a course someplace, is to not leave it on the cushion, but take it with you.
Right. I love that suggestion. I love that. Yeah. Take everything that we have learned once we have reflected, meditated upon it. And yeah, and that's the beautiful goal to embody that. And that's another conversation in itself, isn't it? The embodiment of wisdom, of love wisdom, of higher wisdom, of divine wisdom, whatever you want to call it. That, yeah, what would that look like? And then we see people like humans like the Dalai Lama and a lot of monks. I see a lot of the Vedantists, and they're mostly swamis, monks,
Mhm.
but they seem to embody this wisdom really beautifully. But then um, we don't want that wisdom to be only confined or be a privilege of the monks. We want to bring this to regular daily lives to everybody. That's
Yeah.
what you're doing. I see clearly with your work. You're
Well,
trying to, yeah, isn't
I,
it?
I hope that that's will be the result, for others. But that's exactly what Troy's dilemma is in this last book. So in the first three books, he's met a teacher really by chance, we could say. But after
Uh-huh.
the third book, he's got a summer break coming up, and he's made a decision. He wants to dive much more deeply into his Buddhist study and practice.
Mm,
And his
mm,
concern is because he also has this girlfriend that he's head
mm.
over heels for. He would like to
Yeah,
build an ordinary life with marriage and family and a career.
yeah,
And can you do it all? Those monks you
right,
mentioned, they've taken a different course. They stepped out of that
right,
life. So that's the objective for Troy in this book is how to make that
right.
all happen.
Yes, God, in that his quest, it's one that I think it's everyone's quest. Those, of course, those who are ready to live a spiritual life, right? We have to say it that way. And what makes us ready to embark on a path of spiritual living, of the embodiment of wisdom, Janet? What comes to mind when you hear this question?
I don't know that it's, boilerplate the same for everyone, but I would
Right.
imagine for a lot of people, it's when the suffering has become enough,
Mm,
where you
yeah.
just like this
Yeah.
is you. I think that at our core, we know
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be this painful.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then when
Right.
we have the understanding, when we have some different view that helps us to create things differently in how we live,
Yeah.
doesn't mean you have to
Mm,
walk away from everything in the world. It's just how do we engage in it, and it's a deliberate effort, but
right.
an effort that leads you sort of softening those
Mm,
more painful experiences.
right.
Uh,
Gosh. Um, yeah, in a way, it's beautiful, inspiring, and it's sad to hear that at the same time. That suffering is the birthplace a lot of times for um, this spiritual kind of perspective, perception to arise from.
yeah,
It has been my case too, and I'm sure lots of people that I talk to and listen and watch these interviews. I wonder if there is another path that I have. I said the word now, inspiration. Is that something that do you believe that it's something that could happen just by listening to beautiful people and kind of being inspired to become more like them or to live a more peaceful life as they are, just by the fact that it is possible, as you said, because it
yeah.
is possible. So seeing that, isn't that enough to makes us just wanted to?
You, I don't know that there's a universal statement that applies to everyone, but I do know so many people feel, well, that's for somebody else. That
Right.
wouldn't work for me. We have so many like conditioned self
Mm,
doubts
mm,
that really
yeah.
work against us. And with
Yeah. Mm,
my
mm,
understanding of these teachings and my experience of having to really woven them into my life,
yeah.
I've had that experience of seeing that, oh, even I can recover from some of these other painful
Mm,
experiences in life. Um,
right.
but
Right.
I really feel it takes a little bit of openness to be inspired.
Yeah.
And hopefully,
Ah.
whether,
Mm,
right, to let
mm,
that little piece of light
yeah.
in and to be gentle, for someone
Yeah.
who's in that place where they're just not even seeing an option at all, to be gentle with themselves and to
Yeah.
just have that little whatever openness they can at that moment.
Mm,
And it's their path. It's not,
right.
you know, doesn't have to be prescribed by somebody else. But I think we can be inspired so much just by nature. A
Oh
story
God.
there
Yeah.
was about. oh, a long time ago. um,
Yeah.
I was going through a particularly challenging time. I think my divorce was still new. My children were young. I was trying to figure out how I was going to make everything work. And I was
Yeah.
driving up a road where I saw out of a rock growing
Mm.
a tree. Yeah, I'm sure you've
Wow.
seen that. Like you see like a rock growing out of I mean, a tree growing out of a rock. And when I saw that,
Yes.
I thought,
Yes.
if that tree can grow in that rock, then
Mm.
I can grow through this.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I think if some people aren't comfortable with the idea of God, or obvious a
Right.
religion has taken a sort of a unpleasant tone for a lot of people. But if we can
Right.
see it at work in nature around us, that
Yes.
might be the kind of openness someone can take, to recognize you're part of nature and that
Mm.
interdependence of all of life.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. That's it. I love that. I love the openness, right? Being able to willing to receive something new, something that we never thought about, we have never contemplated. There's something about that. There's something very magical about being open. I agree. And then
Mhm.
from that, almost anything is possible. The more, and then it's just kind of having the courage to become step by step, little by little, more open to the wholeness of life, isn't it? Because it is beautiful. And I love the idea of nature. When you speak of nature, yes. Although I mean, I'm so connected to nature as I am to other human beings in their true nature. Usually I use the word, I think when I think about nature, I think about humans and their true nature. It's almost like I have that on my website because it came to me like all of a sudden. It just makes so much sense. The more we are closer to our true nature, uh, it seems like we see it's so clear that everything again has the same essence, it's growing from the same place. It's this beautiful ground, divine ground. It's so easy to see that, and really really is. But then it takes this, I did this path of spirituality, Janet, I have to say. Although there are some people, Buddhism is not considered a religion, and Vedanta is, but it's more like it's beyond a philosophy too. It is a spiritual philosophy, but it's a little bit beyond that. I mean, there's so many. Yeah, it's very practical. It can get very practical too, very scientific, but there's something about being open to the sacred, to the divine, and it doesn't have to be religious. And I absolutely agree. But I don't think we can get to this realization of the interconnectedness of it all and seeing everything as sacred, as divine, if we have not done what you just described beautifully, the path of wisdom, listening, then reflection, and then meditation, with that intention to bring what we know to the heart and then embody that and then live that out. So it's still, we have a long ways to go, I believe, because yes, I think it's still like being open to something that's not human, that's non-human, and that's in the invisible, um, and that it doesn't have to be religious, but it is mystical, isn't it? So being open to that, I think would change everything. It has been my case.
I think it's like you were saying earlier, it's just there.
Mm,
It's
mm,
there. We
yeah.
just need it.
Yes.
It's sort of like peeling away some of the layers of things that obscure it.
Yes.
Um,
Which sounds very simple, doesn't it? So simple, but
well,
it's not. That's
we're
very
very
much.
attached to our obscurations.
Ah, yes.
You
So it's
know.
not as simple, yeah, when it comes to that. It's true. And that has to be recognized, yeah, as truth as well. That we are like one of the things, we're almost at the end. Gosh, I could talk to you forever. One of the things that really kind of uh brings the sense of humility to me, like immediately, is when I think about losing something. not even something in a sense of no, I have a dog and I'm very attached to him, and then family members and friends, my husband. So losing people we love, that is so yeah, that's what a beautiful attachment, beautiful painful attachment. How can we that's something that obscures, you see, truth, because we never die. We are not really only humans. We are not humans, actually, but we just have this it seems like a concept again. I remember when I was very young, looking in the mirror and saying, "Oh, you're here again in a female body. You know, you're a girl now." So
Really?
as if I knew, yeah, that I had been here before and I had been in different bodies and all these things. It's like that knowledge that's it's almost like a knowledge that's unknowable. In a sense, like Vedanta says, only the divine can know itself. It's not really, and only by grace we can meet that state, be in that state of the divine meeting the divine here. That's the most amazing thing, and we don't know where it comes, why it happens. I don't know, but there's something about the attachment to going back to other humans like you. I'm not a mother, but you and your kids. I can only imagine how can you um, yeah, detach from them.
It's a
It's
very
not needed.
I my
Right.
feeling is there's a difference between being attached and being devoted.
Mm,
When
mm,
we're
yeah.
attached, we're like grasping onto it's like
Mine.
clinging.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
when we're devoted, it's more
Mm,
just love
mm,
and devotion and
yes.
caring and all of that. And
Mm,
that, I
mm,
mean, as a parent,
yeah. Yeah.
or with your
Yeah.
dog, it's like they depend on you, so it's really amped up quite a bit.
Yes.
And it's a
Yes.
challenge to soften that attachment, but to convert it into devotion, I feel is a
Mm,
perhaps a
yeah.
simpler understanding that someone could begin to think about. Because
I
when we're
love
holding
that.
something really tight,
Yeah.
it's painful, right? It
Right.
gets tiring.
Right. Yeah. I love that, Janet. Never thought it that way. I usually use the word devotion a lot. Yes. So the devotion to love, that so it's not an attachment, is it's almost like a longing to the expression of love. And now we have that, the embodiment of that. So what's not to even love more about it, but it's not an attach. It doesn't have to be an attachment type of thing, which you're right would lead to suffering if it is
Yeah.
an
And maybe
attachment.
that devotion is fueled by love. So it's just
Yes.
because of the love that you're behaving in with devotion, and you're engaging with devotion.
Mm, yes. Yeah.
And one thing I learned as being a mother,
Yeah.
that after I had my first child, I was like, oh my God, I love this he's so
Mhm.
much. And when I was pregnant with the second one, it's like, am I going to be able to love the second one as much as,
The
and then it
same.
just
Yeah.
like grows. It was like no problem. And then with the
Mm.
grandchildren, it just keeps growing.
Oh.
So, but
Yeah.
that's the ideal, is to get that sort of love with
Mm.
equanimity towards all, not just the ones who are your relatives, but to everyone.
Oh my God. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. That's beautiful. Yes, that's it. Yeah. And that's divine love, right? It just has no limits, right? It's infinite. It's just, it's so clear
Yeah.
to me and you and so many amazing people that I talk here. Thank you so much, Janet, again, for your beautiful presence in this reality. Thank you for what you represent, what you have devoted your life to. That's something that's very much needed. As as an inspiration, we do need to be reminded too, for those who already know. So thank you so much for being you, for saying yes to this beautiful path. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your time with me and for all the work you do.
Oh my
It's,
God, I love this. Speaking of devotion, what can I do? What can I say?
it's
So I
wonderful.
want to mention your website is Janet Ettele, ETTELE.com. It will be clickable on the podcast notes, so it will be easy. And before we say goodbye for today, Janet, is there anything that you left unsaid? Anything that's called to be here at the
Yeah,
end?
I think this has been really wonderful. It's been a lovely conversation, and I think we could probably talk for hours, but this
Oh
was
my God.
perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll
Lovely to
have
be
also
talking.
the Janet's books will be also clickable. All the that will be redirected to your website and Amazon too. So everything will be on the podcast notes. Thank you again, Janet, for your beautiful presence, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.